Are we ready? Okay. So I call this meeting to order. Can staff please call the roll?
Absent. Braxton Linton.
Present.
Brent Hartman.
Present.
Rebecca Herron.
Present.
Farley Cross. Absent. Mark Robinson.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. First up tonight is the adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda for this evening?
Motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, so we have an agenda. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from our previous meeting on April 25th of 2023.
I move that we approve the minutes from last week.
A second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. Next item is our business discussion items. Can staff please read the item into the record?
Yes. Business discussion items 2023-434, Truong Variance LD 23-000038. The Department of Sustainable Development. Description: this is a request to change where the building is required to be placed. Currently, the building must be placed a minimum of 50 feet from the front property line. This variance is, if approved, would allow the building to be placed a minimum of 20 feet from the front property line. The recommendation: the Development Review Board review petition LD 23-00038, variance for compliance with the criteria for granting a variance.
Thank you. Does staff have a presentation?
Yes, I do. Good evening, Development Review Board. My name is Nathaniel Chan. I'm a planner for the City of Evansville Department of Sustainable Development. This is LD 2338, variance for a proposed single-family dwelling at 3002 Northeast 15th Street. And I'll just get into it. The property is located about a mile west of Waldo Road, south of Northeast 31st Avenue, and west of Northeast 15th Street. The property is currently vacant. The current zoning is RSF2, and the future land use is single family. The RSF2 zoning district requires a front setback of 50 feet from collector and arterial roads. Northeast 15th Street is a collector road. And for lots to be at least 150 feet in depth when they're abutting collector or arterial roads. So the applicant is requesting a variance of the front setback requirement of the Land Development Code to reduce the minimum front setback from 50 feet to 20 feet from the front property line. Here is the existing zoning. So predominantly RSF2 is the zoning, and that's the subject property in red. And here's the future land use map, with single family being the dominant future land use. There is a brown line. It is a little bit hard to see, but that is Northeast 15th Street being classified by FDOT as a major collector road, which requires that 50-foot front setback and the minimum lot depth of 150 feet. Here are the dimensional standards for residential zoning districts. So here I've highlighted the front setback being 20 feet typically. However, with the superscript 4, there's a requirement that lots of abutting collector and arterial streets have a minimum depth of 150 feet and a minimum building setback of 50 feet along that street. So here's sort of an approximate visualization of the proposed variance. You'll see that there's on the right is Northeast 15th Street, and there's a front 50-foot setback, 7.5 feet from the sides and 20 feet from the rear. The lot actually measures only 115 feet, so the subject lot does not meet the minimum lot depth requirement and is only 115 feet deep. So those are essentially what the setbacks are, and if the variance were to be approved, that would leave us with 20 feet from the front, and that would increase where the building can be placed, which is sort of what the applicant is proposing with their single-family home. So here's the site plan. I think I could have blown it up a little bit larger, but the front setback shown here is 25 feet. There are no trees on the lot. It's currently vacant, and this is Northeast 15th Street, which again is a major collector road, which requires 50 feet. So they would have to place their house further back than the lots or than the houses that are currently existing on Northeast 15th Street. So staff reviewed the petition based on the review criteria for variance outlined in section 30-3.55 of the Land Development Code. An analysis of the variance application can be found in the staff report. The Land Development Code also stipulates reasons for which a variance cannot be approved, and I've included that on the slide on the right side. Staff recommends the Development Review Board review the application LD 2338 for compliance with the criteria necessary for granting a variance, and I'm here to answer any questions that you have about this.
Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Chan. Does the board have any questions?
I have a question. You said the lot is vacant right now,
Correct.
so no trees in the area or anything?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Any other questions from the board for Mr. Chan? Yeah, I have a question. Can you go back to that last slide?
Sure, this one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so a variance may not be granted the second bullet point is because of the presence of nonconformities in the zoning district or adjoining district. Can you explain what that means a little bit?
Sure. So variances cannot be granted for the existence of nonconformities in the zoning district. So what that means is that there may be structures or situations where other properties have sort of non-conforming to the Land Development Code. So the variance procedure sort of insinuates that it cannot be granted because of other non-conformities. Does that make sense?
Well,
I know I'm just kind of repeating what the code says.
Let me sort of expand on my question. So one
Sure.
of the things that you pointed out is that that the minimum property requirements require a property depth of 150 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And that this property's property depth is only 115 feet. Are we allowed to consider that in evaluating whether or not to grant a variance? Because I wasn't sure whether that the presence of that nonconformity with the property depth, like are we allowed to consider what the actual property depth is? Because I don't know that there's a way to change that, the minimum property depth.
That's true, yeah. So I would say it is within the realm of consideration with respect to criteria 3, granting the variance requested will not confer any special privilege, that one, and then I think criteria 2 and 1. So there are sort of special conditions and circumstances that exist here and not on other RSF2 zoning districts, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
like, because the existence of Northeast 15th Street being a collector road in which that part of the code may have been added much later than when this lot was platted with the other lots in question, not in question, but in the surrounding area, those sort of special conditions do exist in the area.
Okay,
if
and
that
then
makes sense.
the other one that I was looking at was the variance review criteria number 4 talks about if literal enforcement of the code would deprive the applicant of rights commonly afforded by other properties in the same district. And I think the staff report mentioned that other properties in the area did not conform to that 50-foot step back. So that is something that we are still allowed to consider rather than the prohibited consideration of the nonconformities. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I was understanding the criteria of what we can consider and what we can't consider correctly. Thank you very much for your answer.
Yeah, no problem.
Does the board have any other questions? Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up, because it seemed a bit like those two at odds.
The others are, different, and they're, the reason for, or not a reason for approving is that they're different. So it's a little, I don't want to say confusing, but you see what I'm saying? If yes, you can approve it because they're different, and then no, you can't approve it because it's different.
I may be able to add, can you go back to that other slide?
Sure.
With the
variance,
criteria?
Yeah, criteria, sure.
I think when I read, looking at the right side, number 2, because of the present, it can't be granted because of the presence of nonconformities in the zoning district. I think that's saying you can't, you're not supposed to grant it just because houses next door don't meet it.
But it's not.
But I don't think it's referring to the fact that the lot itself is non-conforming, if that
Okay.
makes sense. I think what it's saying is you shouldn't grant it just because other existing houses don't meet the current setback requirement, but I would say you can consider the depth of the lot, the fact that this code requirement actually requires the lot to be 150 feet deep with this 50-foot setback, but the lot is only 115 feet deep. So that would be my assessment is I don't think that 50-foot setback was written in for a lot at this depth. That would be my thought.
Thank you.
Sure.
So I have a question. Do you know when this lot depth was added to the land development code for the?
I don't. That is a great question.
Because I think that helps with the context of making this decision. You know?
I agree. I did a sort of trial, like look into our land development code on Muni Code, but based on what I've seen, it's not anything recent. And I'll say that provision in the land development code isn't looked at all the time. I think like when we approve like typical building permits for single family development, this provision rarely applies because there are very few lots that do meet that 150-foot depth and are on like a arterial or collector road.
What is just out of curiosity, do you know what the definition of the arterial or collector road is from FDOT?
We have a definition in the land development code that I can pull up, but it is based on daily traffic. So that's another consideration that you might think about is that Northeast 15th Street may have been recently deemed a collector road or major collector road versus previously maybe when the owner bought it or just in general in history it may not have been a major collector road in the past. So that's another consideration.
Do you know when that classification changed?
I don't.
Okay.
These aren't things that we really look at as far as road classifications and that's sort of FDOT's realm.
But that's essentially that's the big issue here is that under normal circumstances an RSF2 house would only have a 20-foot minimum required setback, but because of the classification of the road, that's the reason why the setback is an issue in this case. Is that correct?
Correct. And I would say that the front setback of 50 feet for general context in terms of the land development code, 50-foot setbacks are only observed in this instance for RSF 1 through 4 when they're abutting arterial or collector roads. And then there's only 2 other zoning districts that require a 50-foot front setback. That's agricultural and conservation. So those are, if you think about it in that grand scheme, like these may have been intended for maybe larger lots that have more space, and that 50 feet added is sort of a limiting factor here because it's more developed in a more developed area versus other zoning districts that would require that 50-foot setback from the front.
And then just because I'm curious and see if you could answer this for me, I believe one of the more recent variances that we looked at was one where there was a maximum setback.
Mhm.
What was the classification there where we were looking at where like if the variance
Yes, okay.
that was requested was
Mhm.
they wanted to decrease or they wanted to be able to move the property further back rather than in this case yeah.
Yeah, so this, I'm glad you brought that up because if the two situations were switched, it probably would have worked out in both scenarios for them. But so we were considering a variance to, at the last meeting, I believe, or maybe 2 meetings ago, to reduce the required maximum setback from 20 feet. I think I don't remember exactly. Yeah,
It's literally.
they added another
the same
20
numbers,
feet. Yeah, so they were trying to put their house further away.
Right.
So in that instance, the zoning was a transit zone, and so because it was a transit zone, I can go back to that like land development code page, but here we're looking at the residential zoning districts, the traditional RSF1, the multifamily zoning districts are on this table, but because we were looking at the transit zones, they don't have that requirement from collector or arterial roads. I remember you'd asked a question about that before, and yes, we have it, but it's only for these zoning districts.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Any other questions from the board? Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chan. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't think that the agent is here to present, but I
Okay.
think they wanted to, if they wanted to talk about, I'm not sure.
Thank you. Thank you. As the applicants, would you like to is there anything you'd like to add?
Sure.
Can you come to the microphone? Sorry. Yeah. And can you just
yeah.
for the record, can you state your full
Sure.
name, please?
Good evening. My name is Thomas No, NGO, and I'm a good friend of Mr. Tran since childhood back home.
Okay.
Mr. Tran, he
And
bought
can you,
this.
I'm sorry, sir. Can you introduce yourself just so that we have everybody's record or everybody's name for the record?
Yeah, me not speaking.
Okay. Just can you say your name?
My name is Phong Tong.
Okay. Thank you.
His name is Phong Truong.
Okay. Thank you. And you're the property owner, sir?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank
Yes,
you.
sir. Yeah, I'm here just to translate for him, but I don't know how good he has his idea. But before we came here, he wanted to express what he wanted to say about
Okay.
it. He bought this piece of property. It has a house on it. When he bought it, to a lady lived next door. She owned this property for years, and she let it vacant, and finally the city decided to schedule for the demolitions, and he bought it just right before the city demolished the buildings. So when he bought it, the city gave him only 7 days to demolish the buildings, so he did. And right after that, he hired a a builder to build a house for him right away. But it was a property there before the permit was issued. But the setback, that neighborhood was very well established neighborhood, and all the houses in that street has very much the same setback. I believe it's about 30 feet, or maybe more or less, except school and churches, So in order for his builder to put a 1,500 square feet home in there with 50 feet setback, he doesn't have that much in the back, probably about like 18 or 20 feet. Plus, in that neighborhood, all the utilities and all the cables, sewage lines, gas lines, everything run in the back of that neighborhood. So for him to put 1,500 square feet in that property with 50 feet setback, I don't think there's much room in the back in terms of, utility, accessories, some other things. So he wanna say that, there's could be some exception, especially that neighborhood. You don't want the house sit like 30 feet back or 20 feet back from the rest of the neighborhood. It doesn't look right. So, I mean, he wanted to say that, I mean, he want to have his house built so he can live in. I mean, he want to build a house where he can live in it. But he just want to have some exception instead of not have the house built. If that requirement, no way he can build a house there. Because when he bought the property, he intended to demolish and build just a little bit bigger home, because that house was only like 900 square feet before he demolished it. So that's all he wanted to say.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. I
welcome.
appreciate your presentation. Does the board have any questions for the applicant? No. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right, I would open it up to the board for deliberation. Anybody have any comments, thoughts that they would like to share on this petition?
I mean, I can start. So I think that with the fact that the lot itself is much smaller than what was anticipated in the code, if we were to look at it at percentage-wise, then it kind of fits, right? Like, we're not asking for the back setback to be reduced, so we need that to at least stay at 20. My biggest concern was he asking for the minimum variance there? So if we took, it's about a third of the lot size at 150 would be the 50-foot setback, right? So it's about a third. And so a third of the 115 would be about 37. But you're not taking a percentage off the back, right? We're not accounting for that whole thing. So there's about 10 feet to spare, so I think 20 is reasonable. I think that was my biggest concern, was like, is 20 that minimum? Because everything else seems to fit. It's a peculiar land size. It's not causing any issue, like there's still harmony in the whole area. I would consider it the minimum to create a home that is not outrageous, right? Like, it's not a huge footprint. It's a normal size footprint. It fits within the small frame. Everything else is met. So I see it meeting all the conditions for a variance. But really only because it's much smaller. And I'd say percentage-wise, it fits in there.
Thank you. Anyone else, any comments?
Yeah, I have a comment. So, the applicant said that they already planned to demolish the house before the city made them do it. So, would that be a special condition and circumstances on the action of the applicant? Even though the city was going to do it either way, I would say, I don't know, I'm kind of in between on it, because I live in this neighborhood and I've seen the house that was there before, and all the houses in the neighborhood is about the same size, probably no more than 1,200 or 1,300 square feet on that road. And they all are maybe, I want to say, 30 feet away from the road. But what's if we approve this, what does that do for the rest of the houses in the neighborhood? Because what if I just decide, like, hey, I don't like my house no more, I want a bigger house. I knocked mine down, now I'm putting mine closer to the road with a bigger house, you know?
So, it could be, I'm not sure that I can answer your question, but I think my understanding would be is if a house is knocked down, then it would also require a variance to.
Each house would require a variance.
Right.
So we would essentially be here for every house on 15th Street.
If every house on 15th Street got knocked down and it was still classified as an arterial road.
Right. Because I doubt it's gonna change from arterial road, because It's school zones there, plenty churches on that street. It's a lot of traffic.
Are all the lots less than
Yeah.
that length? So
Yeah.
they're all in that 115th length?
Yeah, all of them are.
Yeah, I guess, you know.
They all kind of fit that though. When we look at that, there was that one slide that had like the setbacks, one was at 28, one was at 30, one was, I mean, they're all
But then
within that range that he's asking for.
yeah, and then again, they're all under the 1,500 square feet too.
Yeah.
So it's like
I mean, so I think one of the things that we can do is if we decide, so the request is for us to reduce the setback from 50 feet to 20 feet, which would be the normal RSF setback if it wasn't on an arterial road. But my understanding is if we decided we could change the setback and we could grant a variance that would only reduce the setback to 25 feet if we wanted to, you know, make the setback. And I believe that was still in compliance with the designs. Mr. Chan, was the design for a 25-foot setback? Yes. So if we granted a variance, it would still be closer to what the code sets forth as in terms of not making the reduction all the way down to 20 feet, but it would still allow the building owner to move forward with their plan. So if we wanted to, I believe that we could still grant the variance, but change the setback minimum to 25 feet rather than 20 feet if we wanted to. And that would still, you know, to me, that seems like that would still make it in harmony with the other houses in the neighborhood, but meet that number 5 requirement of the variance requesting being the minimum variance required to make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure.
Yeah.
If that's what we decided to do as a board, I think we're allowed to decide that if we want to.
yeah. Okay. I guess my question is just
Is this a result of his own actions? Like, does he meet qualification number 2?
yeah, that one, and then would we have multiple people come forward, like not now, but later on in life, like everybody comes to request a variance. Because what does that do for the land development code? Like, are we just gonna override it just because the lot sizes are smaller? Like, we're setting a precedent now.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely, I think that's a very valid point. I think, I do think that each one of those scenarios can be evaluated on their own merits. And, you know, my understanding here is that, you know, with this specific property, it was about to be condemned already. So I do think that that's something that we have to consider, that it wasn't, you know, from the information that has come before the board tonight, it sounded like it wasn't in a livable circumstance. You know, I think if everybody else in that neighborhood comes forward and their circumstances are different, where the house is perfectly fine, they just want a bigger house, I think then we have to consider that case on its merits as well. But there is some consideration that needs to be given to whether we're setting a precedent or not. But, you know, I also think, you know, even if we are setting a precedent, you know, the fact is RSF2 is supposed to have a minimum setback requirement of 20 feet, and with all of the properties being only 115 feet, with the depth, you know, I think I would still be open to considering all of those, because those are that special condition and circumstance is something that's not a result of the action of any applicants or you know, theoretical applicants that we would have from that same neighborhood if those other circumstances arose. So that's kind of just my thoughts on it, but I'm open to hearing what you think, Mr. Robinson, and what anybody else thinks as well.
I think those are great questions. I recognize you're wondering about I feel like if there were some other concerns in the neighborhood, perhaps they would have come and presented your thoughts on it as well. But I think it seems that it meets the criteria, and I think if they're in true 20 or 25 feet, let them build their home and live a peaceful life, and that seems like it falls within the guidelines.
Yeah, I would agree. I think yes, we would be setting a precedent that the special condition, they do fall under peculiar land structure, right? Like if this code was written expecting 150-foot depth and they're 115, boom, they're already like, it's just as if, we expect everything to be a square and we have a triangle come in. So I think they qualify under that, even if we did set this precedence. I think the number 2, the special circumstances, I personally don't believe it's an action of the applicant. It was going to be condemned anyway. It's either the city or them who did it. If they bought the land, kudos to them, save the city a little bit. But the minimum, I'd be willing to support going to a 25-foot step back instead of the 20 requested. I think that's fine. I think that's still within the minimum being asked. If that would make you more comfortable to do a 25 over a 20. I think that's fair. Yeah.
Any other thoughts from the board? I mean, I feel like I've kind of shared my thoughts for the most part in looking at those different criteria that we're supposed to use when evaluating a request for a variance. It does appear to meet a lot of those criteria. The only thing that I'm looking at again is that number 5, the variance request is the minimum variance required. If we decided to grant the variance, only reducing the setback to 25 feet rather than reducing all the way down to 20, it seems like maybe that would be the best of both worlds for everybody. But I'm open to a motion from the board, if anybody would like to make a motion.
I'd make a motion to approve.
All right.
Sorry.
And would you, is that motion to approve, would that be reducing the setback to 20 feet?
Yes, I make a motion to approve the setback to 20 feet, what the applicant is asking, on the basis of it'll match the character of the neighborhood and it was not under their, own doing.
Okay. Is that sufficient language for a motion? Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously, sorry. Next item, any public comment? Do we have any members of the public that would like to comment? Next item, any member comment? No? All right. Our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, June 27th, 2023. And with that, do we have to have a motion to adjourn, or can I just adjourn? Oh, do I have a motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. We are adjourned.